Okay guys, so we're going to be looking at adding components to the form. So in the last video you saw we had a quick overview of explaining where things were in here, how you set up a new project, etc, etc. What we're going to do this time is we're going to open up a project. Now you'll notice that we've got recent projects down here. This might not be here for you, I don't know. Fingers crossed it is. If it's not, don't stress too much. But we're going to go through the open project. So we're going to go to open project, and we could also do this through the start menu or through the little icon here. And you're going to navigate to the area that is where you've saved all your projects to. Now you'll notice this takes me to my documents. Well, I don't have a my documents file here. I saved it to the D drive. It was to my user area, VB projects, sample project 2, and you'll notice this VB10 sample project. I'll click on that one, click OK, and it will open up my project. I could also just double click the file and it should automatically open up my project. In theory, I could navigate to the file itself, double click it, and it would open up Visual Basic Express with this in. Yeah, and this gives us our form. So this is our basic form, and if you remember mine's probably a little bit bigger than yours if you started it, but I slightly resized my form. Now what we're going to do over the course of a few videos is create a sort of grade predictor type of application. It's not the best application in the world. It's not the most useful application in the world. It's somewhat relevant because you're a student and you can relate to it. That's the reason I've chosen it. It's a relatively straightforward and simple application. There's nothing overly complicated. There's nothing in here that's going to stump you or flummox you or any. You should be able to follow this along, not a problem. So what we're going to do to start with is we're going to slightly expand our form area. Now this is purely out of personal preference. This isn't what you should be doing because this is what you do as a programmer. This is purely and simply personal preference for me. It gives me more area to work with, and I start adding controls up from this top left, and I sort of add them in this direction, and I sort of get them all onto the canvas, as it were. I rearrange them round and get them doing what I want it to do. So I want to have a text box to start with. We're going to have a text box. We're going to have get some user input. We're going to have something on here that the user can enter some text. So we've got a few different controls, and the first one we're going to have is a text box. And we're going to put this on, and now I'm just going to resize this so it fits in, and it looks nice and neat. And if I click play, I have text box. Ta-da! It doesn't do anything. It's just a text box. Oh yeah, that's a point I should make actually. You've got the play button here, which says start debugging, but it just basically means run your code, and you'll have a little blue stop button which stops your code after it's finished running. Yep, so I'm going to put lines down and make this a little bit bigger, just so it fills up the screen a little bit more. I didn't like the fact that it chopped off form 1. So as we see this now, we've got form 1 that's clearly visible, we've got all the control buttons up here, and we've got a text box, which is great. It doesn't really do anything at the minute. It's just a text box. But what we can do is we can modify this form. So we've not really covered this properties window. When I was going over saying, oh, this is your toolbox, blah blah blah, I never really touched on to what this area here is. This area to the right, this properties area. And basically the properties area allows you to modify the look and feel and behavior of your application without writing too much code. It automatically generates the code for you. You don't need to worry about it too much. So what we can do is we can change, for example, we can change the icon, we can change the text, we can change the background color of the form, we can change whether or not we've got these buttons on, we can change the behavior, you can change what happens when we click the X button, we can change all sorts of lots of lovely little stuff. on here. I'm not going to go through all of these options. If you are interested, if you would like to maybe get rid of the minimize or the maximize button, or if you want to change what happens when you click the X, you can look at what happens here. So it'd be like cancel button, a different thing. You can look at how what options are available to you and how you would do this. I don't know if I mentioned in the other videos, but Google is your friend, and I would expect you to use Google. Don't just hand straight up and say, how do I do this? You need to get into the habit of using Google. This is promoting learning, your own self-learning. You have to be able to figure some of this stuff out for yourself as well. I will give you worksheets, I will give you pointers, and I can nudge you in the right direction, but at the same time I want you to sort of take responsibility and ownership for your own learning in this one. But for the time being, we're going to look at the basics of how we create this form and how we modify this one. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the form, the form 1 text here. Now anytime we've got text on a form or text on a component, we can go to the text object and we can enter here. So we're going to call this test just for the time being, and hit enter, and you'll notice now that on the form it's changed to test. If I click the text box and I come down to text, you'll notice that there is actually no text in that. But if I were to put hello, the word hello appears in this text box. Okay. A text box is something that I can modify the contents for. I'm not actually going to have I'm not going to have that in to start with. I don't want anything in there. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the background colour. So at the minute I've still got the text box highlighted. I'm going to go to where it says back colour, and I'm going to change it to a black. Now unfortunately, if I were to write something in here now, like test, I would say hello, you can't see that. And that's because the text colour is black as well, and for colour in terms of this is actually test colour. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this one to window, and you'll notice now that it appears as black. We can change this to various different colours. So if we go, we've got custom, up at the top I can change it to red. Oh, sorry, I've not got the custom. Change it to red, and it goes to red. Or I can change it to, I can become a hacker, and I can change it to green. Okay. And if I've now got the form selected, I want to change this back to black. I'm going to change the background colour on here to let's choose a different colour. What colour shall we have? Purple. A little bit bright. And yeah, it's a little bit bright. It's a little bit gaudy. And if we run this is what we're faced with. It looks a little bit strange. Looks a little bit daft. It doesn't really do anything. Now, I did promise you that today in this lesson, in this video, you're going to get your first look at some Visual Basic code, which we're going to have a look at now. So, do you know what? Okay guys, so in the last video we looked at how we set up a new project. In this video we're going to look at how we start a project. So in the last one we had sample 2's project. I can't remember if I've actually I think I might have actually saved this one. As I load this up, this may bring us into a slightly strange one that I was playing around with. Yeah, what we'll do is we'll start a new project in this one, I think, actually. So you'll come into Visual Basic, you'll come to open up project, you'll open up your project. I'm just going to start this one. I'm going to call it Web Windows application, just to start with. And it brings you up, and this will start your new project. Now, as I said, you click save, make sure your path is set, and it will save it to an area so you can continue working on it. A few things that we're going to sort of cover in this video. Now, I never mentioned what this area here was. This is the properties area, and we're going to also have a look at some terminology. So, very quickly, the window. So as this pops out, so as you see this is a window. Now this is what we call a Windows form, or a window form. So the window that comes out is referred to as a form. We in computing, we call them windows. As it pops up here, you got the browser window or whatever, it opens up. But in terms of the design and the programming, they're referred to as forms. And these down here are called controls or components, and you will add a button component by dragging and dropping a button component onto the form. If that makes sense. You would add a label component to the form, so on and so forth. Okay, so if I can delete that one as well. So yeah, that's a little bit of terminology. So form is the sort of like the canvas where you're going to apply things to, and the components are the controls that go onto the form. Right, okay, so now to look at the properties window. Now there are lots of different options here, and you might be looking at this thinking, oh my god, I'm never going to remember all those. Well, don't worry, you don't need to remember all of those, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know all of them. I've been using this for several years, and I honestly, I don't know them. Some of them are quite self-explanatory, like opacity, so that's how see-through something is. Minimum size, maximize box, that maximize box is this one. Minimize box, that's that one. So if you didn't want those on, so say for example, I set that to false, it wouldn't allow, means I can't maximize it. So if I go on to, so which one did I just set to false? Minimize box. Okay. So if I go onto this one, you'll notice that the minimize box is now grayed out. I can maximize it, set it back to normal, but I can't minimize it. Okay. So if I were to do maximize box, set that to false, you'll notice that they've disappeared. So I can't minimize it or I can't maximize it. Okay. Quite self-explanatory. Things like font, unsurprisingly enough, is the font. And text, generally speaking, wherever you've got text on that component. So this is technically, the form itself is technically a component, and there is a text element to that form, which is here. And if we change this to, and we call it just something like, I don't know, like test, it changes the text element up here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set these back to true for both of them, and we're going to put both of those on there. We're going to leave the test text up at the top, but I can also change the background color. So I can say blue, and it puts a nice blue background on there for us, and I can change various different properties. Now that's great. This allows me to change how it looks, how it feels, but really I don't just want to do that, I want to change how it behaves. So if, for example, I were to stick a button on there, it's nice that I can customize the button, I can make the button look as I want it to look, but when I click that button, I want it to do something. I want it to, something to happen. There's no point of having a button on the form unless it's going to do something. And every single component has what we call events. And these events are basically the actions that take place. So when this form loads, I can set up certain events. And to look at the different events that are available to us, we look at up here we've got this little lightning bolt, and we can click the lightning bolt, and this takes us to all the different events that we can have in there. So you'll notice that load is highlighted straight away, and load is the default. So when the form loads, something can happen. Now I can double click into there. Alternatively, what I can do is I can double click on the form itself, and what this will do, or I shouldn't just say double click on the form, I should say double click on the component. So in this case, we're looking at the form. We want to put something to the form. So when the form loads, then it's going to do something. So we double click the form, and this takes us into the code. So you'll notice as well, we've got an extra tab opened up. We've got form1.vb, and then in square brackets design, and then form1.vb. Technically, all that we see in terms of this, all this visual code is just text. It's text in a file, text in lots of different files, to be honest, but it's just text. And what we're doing now is we're actually editing some of that text. Now you don't see a lot of it. A lot of it's been hidden from us because it wants to make sure that we don't start messing around and trying to tweak our forms. You can get to every single aspect of code. You don't really want to, because if you start messing around with the code, you can start breaking things and things don't behave as they're supposed to. But we've got up here, we've got this form sub, private sub form load, and then we've got lots of different things in here. Handles mybase.load. So what this is basically saying is, when this form loads, this is what's going to happen. Something's going to happen. It's going to do something. And I'm just going to do message box dot actually, I'm just going to do and this is going to kick off. Oh, there we go. So as it opens up, as it loads, it's going to give us a message which just basically says hello. So we'll do this one again. So as the form loads, it's going to, a message box is basically just a little pop-up, and it's just going to say that. Now we can put lots of different options in. I was going to put some different buttons in. Excuse me. I was going to put some different buttons in and some different options, but I just settled to have a plain old message box that said hello. And that's pretty much it. That's is it? Pretty much it, really, in terms of how you would add code to it, and it's literally that simple. And to get rid of the code, you just delete the method, and you'll notice. And you just delete the method, and it's gone. Now, at the minute, the form doesn't do anything. I've just taken away that message box. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag a text box on, and I'm going to stretch the text box out, resize the form. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change this text here based on what I put in. So in fact, actually, I'm going to make this a little bit shorter because I don't want this to be too long. Okay. So as I enter text into here, I want it to appear up here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my component. I'm going to click on these here, and I'm going to look for the one that says text change. I'm going to double click it, and I'm just going to basically put the form 1 dot, remember it was text, equals text box 1 dot text. And if I run this, yes, okay, why is that? It did not. That's okay, guys. So in the last video, we looked at starting a new project in VB, and basically looked at briefly. It's sort of like around the area. So what you can do in VB is you can go to Open Project. You can click on the Open File, File Open. If you've already started that project, I'm going to create a new project just very quickly for the purposes of this. And once again, if you're creating a new project, you would click Save, and it would save it to your area. The one thing I didn't touch on as we in the last video was this area here, which was the properties window. And I didn't really give you much detail in terms of some key terms. So very quickly, I'll cover some key terms. Then I'll look at the properties window, and then I'll look at adding components and a little bit of functionality to your form. So the first thing to note is this is called a form, or it's referred to as a form. So when you click the play button, you get a window opens up, and what we would call like a browser window or a your Microsoft Word window, a window that pops up. That in programming terms is referred to as a form, and it's pretty much like it's like a blank form. It's a blank canvas where you can add different components or controls to, and these are your components that you can put on there. So you've got lots of different ones. You can say what's going to happen when the pointer goes over something. You can have buttons, checkboxes, labels, pictures, also progress bars, radio buttons are the little dots that you click one and it deselects the other ones, calendars, all sorts of different things, text boxes. And they're different controls that you have. So anything that you see on here, on this, in terms of any Windows application, any sort of programming application, is pretty much contained within these different controls. So you can even have a menu strip across the top. So yeah, you've got a menu strip that you can put onto there. You literally just drag it across, and it puts something in there like, call this one File, and then what's the next one? Edit, and then we'll just do Help across the top, and that's this pretty much. And as you go over it, you can do sub menus, sub items in there. So like new, open, so on and so forth, and you've got different options. The other thing to note is this bit down the side here. This is your properties down the right hand side, and there are sort of two views you can have. You've got the alphabetical. Personally I prefer the alphabetical because I know what I'm looking for. If you don't know what you're looking for, I would suggest that you maybe start off with categorized, and you can have things like appearance, behavior, data, design, focus, layout. Some of these you're not going to use. Trust me, you're not going to use. You're probably going to use appearance, behavior, design, layout, maybe, possibly not actually. Yeah, you're probably only just going to use appearance, behavior, and design to start with. Not even data. Data's things like if you link in a database up there and you put in information into there. So to start with, I would just focus around appearance, behavior, and design. And as you add new components on there, you'll pretty much use the same things, and just keep it to those, and you'll be looking good. As soon as you're a little bit more advanced, or if you've used VB before, you may want to go into the alphabetical option. This gives you literally everything that's in there, A to Z, everything. Moving across here, you've got the properties window. So this shows you all the properties. Now properties change the look and the feel of the component and of your application. The one next to it is events, and these are a list of actions that can be taken. So say for example you put a button onto your form. You want that button to do something. Okay, you want that button to have some form of an action. So when you click it, it does something. But you've also got other events. So things like when the form is closed, what happens when you drag something over it? What happens when you drop something? What happens when you press a key? What happens when you hover your mouse over something? You've got lots of different types of events, so you can change. So as we go on to this, as you see, as I hover I'm not doing anything. I hover the mouse over the top, and the background changes to red. Well, there's an event that's been placed into there. That's built in as standard. But somebody had to write that code that said that when that mouse hovers over this area, it's going to change the background color to red. And you've got tooltips and various different things that go on in there as well. So all these events add functionality. So you've got properties which change the look and the feel. You've got events which affect the functionality of your program. And that kind of covers the basics of what you're going to do in and around these. For the time being, I would suggest that when it comes to events, you put them into alphabetical order. It will make it much easier. For the most part, you're probably going to just work on the double click principle, which I'll explain to you now. So as you select a component, you will notice that something on here becomes highlighted. So say for example I select the form. Normally it's load. By default you'll have text. So I go onto that, it's load. So property. Okay, so here we go. So as I moved across, it's now changed to item click because I've got this menu strip highlighted. As I go onto the form, you'll notice it's load that's highlighted. Okay, that's very specific. It's the most common event for that component. So for the form, when the form loads, you want to do something. There aren't many other things that you're going to do with the form, because the form's kind of like the background. It's like the piece of paper that you write on. You don't really do anything to it other than add components to it. But when that form is originally presented, that's originally sort of shows up, you may want to do something then. So as I was saying about the double click thing, so you notice load for the form was highlighted. So as I double click the form, I've got form 1 load. So if I go and I double click the this one, you'll notice menu strip item clicked. So whatever the default action is, if you double click the component, that default action will appear. So, okay. And what we want to do is we're going to go to the form load. And what we're going to say, we're going to ignore the menu strip for the time being, so we can just delete that piece of code out of there. If we go back to the form, go back to the menu item, you'll notice that item clicked, there's nothing in there, but in form, we have form1.load, form1load. So we're going to go into here and we're going to enter some code. I'm just going to put something very simple into this one. As you'll notice, as you start typing, you get a little list of common things that can go into here. So you've got message box. Now I can hit the enter key, or I could double click it, and I can just put something like hello. Don't worry about remembering how to do these. I'll explain in another video about the different components, the different events and what they do. But basically, when the form loads, a little message box is going to pop up and it's going to say hello. It's going to allow us to click OK, and it's going to close, and then the form's going to appear. So click play. You can see our little message, our little dialog box, message box. Click OK, and then the form appears and the form loads up. And we've also got our menu items here that we've set up. Okay, excellent. So what we want to do now is we want to add a little bit of extra functionality. Now I don't need this this menu strip, so I'm just going to delete the menu strip. But I do want to add a text box, so I'm going to drag a text box on here. And what I want to happen with this text box is when I type something into this text box, I want it to appear up here. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to change the properties. And we're going to use the events, and we're also going to use the properties, and we're going to use them in conjunction together. Now the first thing I should really mention to you, it's really good programming practice to do this, is to name your components properly. So something like a form, we're going to want to call it main form, so we can identify as our main form. So as we click into here, we go up to the top to where it says name in brackets, and we just delete what's in there. I tend to use a naming convention with the component type, so like a shorthand for the component type, so FRM for form, and then main form. I'll cover naming conventions in class at some point, but basically stick to one and keep it. So we're going to call this main form, main form. Then we're going to click on the text box component. We're going to do the same. txt_vx, and we're just going to say input. That's all. It doesn't need to be anything spectacular, it doesn't need to be anything fancy, it doesn't need to be anything overly long. It just needs to be something which you can reference these by. So what I'm going to do now is, if I click on the text box here, and I click on the events, you'll notice that text changed is the default event. So if I double click it, and as I start to enter text, so as text is changed, it's going to display that to the form. So what I want to say is me, because the form is like the piece of paper, the blank piece of paper, it's the base element, so it is the root of everything. So I can refer to the form by saying me. So me.text equals, if I start typing text box, because I'm using my own name convention, my naming convention, it limits the number of options there. So if I only add like two text boxes, I can quickly and simply see which one it is, and it's going to be textbox.text. So I'm just going to test this by running it. I get my hello message that comes up, And then I get my text box here, and as I start to type into it, I'm going to start typing hello. You'll notice that it appears in the top. And that is a very, very basic, simple and basic program. I can click close onto that. And a very, very simple, very, very basic program. We're going to change this up somewhat in the next video. And we're going to start adding some actual functionality to it. We're going to put some buttons on there, and we're going to make things happen with the buttons. But what I could also do is I could store this to a variable. So I could say string words, just as an example, and then say okay, we'll kind of leave on. Okay, so in the next video, we will look at jazzing this form up a little bit and adding some extra functionality to it.